Welcome to the Lindsay and Tony podcast, where we talk about spirituality, business, and life experiences.
In this podcast, we're bringing our private conversations to you.
We believe that it's through discussion, action, and reflection that true change occurs. Hello and welcome to episode 72, Suppressing Psychic Awareness Through Addiction with Anthony Maracas. In this episode, I interview my friend and psychic medium, Anthony Maracas. We talk about his journey going from addiction to discovering his psychic mediumship abilities. Whether you are someone that suffers from addiction or you know someone that does, this episode will be eye-opening for you. It's time to start becoming aware of the correlation between highly sensitive people and the addiction epidemic. Welcome, Anthony. I'm so happy that you're here, and I'm excited for everyone to hear your journey because you have so much to share with the world that I feel like I know you because we've known each other since, I think it was 2013, right?
Yeah.
Chicago, we met at Lisa Williams's class. It was one of my first mediumship classes that I took. And I felt like there's some people that you just click with right away. And I felt like, Anthony, you were one of them. And even though we don't see each other as often as I would like, because we're in two different states, I'm just glad that we're connected. So welcome. And I just want to hear your story with your spiritual journey and coming into mediumship. And you know, sometimes we don't know what other people have been through throughout their life. And I know you've had an experience where spirituality came into your existence, but I want to hear how that happened for you.
Yeah. So thanks for having me, first off. And I'm always grateful to stay connected. I can't believe it's been that long, actually, 2019.
I know.
I can't believe we're in 2019. So again, thank you for your connection and allowing me for being here. So a little bit about, again, I'll give you the real short version, into my mediumship. For me, it wasn't, I don't remember seeing spirit as a child. That just wasn't my thing. I don't remember a lot of my childhood, though, to be quite honest with you. So to say if I do or don't, I couldn't tell you. I feel like I blocked a lot of, subconsciously, I must have blocked a lot of my childhood out. I must have, gone through an emotional kind of upbringing there. Mm-hmm. So for me, I know that I was not a believer. I was a full-blown skeptic. I didn't believe in mediumship. I always say this, I remember seeing John Edward on TV, probably, it's got to be 20 years ago or 19 years ago now, when he had Crossing Over on. And I remember flipping through the channels that day, being home, daytime TV, and I said, those people are paid actors. And I flipped the channel as I watched him make one connection there. And so that was just my belief. I just didn't believe. And for me, it was many years later, I actually went to a gallery. Someone actually at my work at the time asked me if I wanted to go. And I remember it was about 9 o'clock in the morning when they asked me. And I said, well, what's that? And they said, oh, do you ever see that guy, John Edward on TV? And I said, yeah. They said, well, it's like that. I said, nah, that's not real. And I walked out of the office, and interesting enough, later on, as the day went on, knowing now, looking back how perfect it was, as the day went on, my thinking started to change, not of believing in it, but that I think I should go to this. So it was really weird. So about, this woman was the secretary at the time of where I was working. And so she left at like 4:30 or 4:45. So I think at like 4:20, I walked in the office. I'm like, oh, you're still going? She's like, yeah. I go, yeah, save me a seat. And so I went down there, again, not expecting anything, just to kind of check it out. And lo and behold, I was the second person called on, from this medium, and she made me stand up in front of all these people. And at the time, they were actually doing this in Barnes & Noble. So Barnes & Noble used to do demos. They used to, I guess.
That's actually surprising. I can't imagine that, but that's a good setting.
Yeah, it was different, it was Barnes & Noble. And so this woman said some things to me that I just couldn't understand. How could she possibly know? Very specific evidence around my life that was happening. And she was bringing through my grandmother. And I just couldn't understand how she would know this. So it turned my thinking around, right?
How old were you there?
God, I had to have been probably around, I would say around 24 or 25 years old then. Then, later on, and I was at that, for me, I had a big issue with drugs and alcohol throughout my life. there from a young age. And I mean, by my age of 21, I was actually in and out of, I think, 3 rehabs already, 3 different times in rehab, because I just couldn't get sobriety in some sense. So at this time around 24, 25, I'm sober, and now I'm starting to believe in this stuff. And it really made me curious. So I started doing research, I guess, on it. But, I still had that skeptical mind there. So fast forward all the way until I'm about 32 or 33. That's when I went back out and relapsed around 2007 or 2008. So I went back out there and I became a bartender, which is always great to do. I became a sober bartender, and that really didn't work. So eventually I relapsed. And for 2 years straight, I kind of just really found a new hell on earth. And I started to pray again and actually asked, God for help and to get sober again, because my life was totally unmanageable and everything was just crumbling down around me. And so I get sober through these weird circumstances again. And as I get sober this time, I'm not understanding why I'm here. Like, why am I here? I'm now, 32 or right around 32 or 33. And, I haven't really found my purpose in life at this point. I've worked jobs. I've done good at, the jobs that I worked at, sales. My father owned a business, a machine shop. So I worked for him as a machinist. I did sales. I was a bartender. I did all these different types of jobs, and I never really found my purpose. And on top of it, I've had multiple car accidents at this point. I've crashed my car into a telephone tree. I had run-ins with the police. I got shot at in Fairfield, New Jersey by a police officer there that it could have been life or death, literally, because it was so close to me that it knocked me unconscious onto the street. And I'm not understanding, why am I here? And so I start praying, and I remember praying this prayer for about a week and a half, and all this synchronistic stuff started to happen to me. And I couldn't deny anymore, like, there was some weird kind of connecting of the dots that was happening with the people that were coming out, the places I was in at that exact same time, with the messages I was starting to receive. And so this, an old friend came along and told me I should go for a reading. And I was like, a reading? What are you talking about? And they said it was a psychic, and I said, nah, but again, I couldn't deny of all this stuff. And even a close friend of mine, when I was driving, we were driving home from a 12-step meeting, a guy, he said, dude, you should go. You should just go, because all this weird stuff's happening.
And was that before or after the Barnes & Noble thing?
This was years after Barnes & Noble.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that was 25. So now I'm around 32 or 33. And now I'm sober. I'm just coming back from my relapse. So I'm getting sober. Maybe I had about a month or two sober. And that's when all these that's when I started that prayer, use me as you will. I don't know why I'm here. Yeah. But God, please just take my life and I surrendered, and use me how I'm supposed to be here. Show me what my purpose is. Type of a prayer here that I prayed for, like I said, for about a week and a half. And that's when all those things started happening. So my friend said, you should go to, you should just do it. Like, it doesn't matter if it's a site, you should just do it. Because all these, I can't believe these weird things that are happening to you. And so I did do it. And it's funny, again, I'm kind of an open book. I share in the sense of the honesty, not because of my story, but hopefully if anyone listens, that there's some sort of hope here. At the time, I didn't even have a bank account. I 3 banks just closed bank accounts on me. I had nothing, So I even had to the woman that said you should go for this reading, I actually had to bring her the money. She was a school teacher. I had to show up at her school, give her the money so she could pay for it on her debit card for me, because I didn't have a bank account. And that's how the psychic works. So sure enough, I set up this phone appointment, and this woman, gets on the phone, and she does a great reading, and I didn't know what to expect. And she, again, nailed a lot of things that I was going through at that point in time, which this woman has no clue who I am.
Right.
And long and behold, I thought it was interesting. I said, wow, I felt supported by, I guess, what I would call now the spirit world. She did bring up through angels too as well. And after I got off the phone, I said, that was really interesting. She did hit a lot of things. I can't deny that. And about 2 days later, the woman that set this up messages me and says, I'm sorry, it wasn't 2 days. It was about a week later. Says to me, have you been thinking of that psychic? I said, no, what are you talking about? And she says, no, well, she wants to talk to you. And as I'm picking up my phone to say, I don't have money, because I still have a skeptical mind. I'm thinking this woman wants my money again. I'm like, I don't have any money. She actually messaged me back. It was the time of BBM, so BlackBerry Messenger.
Oh, yeah.
She was like, she was already wrote back, actually. She said, she knows you don't have any money. She needs to talk to you. You've come in spirit for the past week. You've come up in her, through spirit with her. It was all her.
That gives me goosebumps when you just said that.
I said, sure. All right, make it for Tuesday. Yeah, it was interesting, right? And she said, I said, you know what, make it for Tuesday. I'm open. She goes, no, she wants to talk to you tomorrow. I'm like, okay, fine, just make it.
Mm-hmm.
So I get back on the phone with this woman. She says the same thing. I know you don't have money, but you've come up in every reading. Spirit has brought you up in every reading this past week. There's some sort of message. Let me just, tune in, and let's see what happens here. And she gave me another, she gave me this, beautiful, again, validation, evidence, more things that were happening, what was going on in that past week. So, which made me believe her. And then she told me that I was very energetically sensitive and I had this ability. And that if I chose to follow it or not, but, and I felt like at that time, I think when I hung up, I was like, oh, I got nothing better going on. I didn't know, here I am. I prayed this prayer, right? I prayed this prayer of God, use me as, you see fit. What is, thy will for my life? Whatever you want me to go, that's the way I'll go. And now all of this stuff is happening to me. And here this lady's telling me that this is, who I am or what I am, if I choose to follow it. And she told me that weird things were going to start happening to me. And that here was her, email and phone number, and she wouldn't charge me again because she knows that some weird stuff's going to start happening to me. And I'm going to need to talk to someone about it. So, that was like, I remember she said, you should look into Reiki and maybe take a class on it or learn about it. It will help you to learn energy or feel energy.
Right.
And so we got off the phone and I was, kind of dumbfounded. And then she did bring up a lot of these things that were going to start happening to me. Like, I think she brought up about like seeing hawks and stuff. And literally like the next day I'm out walking my dog. Here comes this hawk. Like, and I felt like this thing's following me. Like, I felt like so weird. Like, everywhere I went, because I lived in this condo complex at the time, and I was walking my Tasha, my Doberman. Everywhere I went, this hawk was around. And I was like, what's going on? It was like, she said it was an omen. And again, I think that omens, my belief of what an omen was supposed to be bad, because
right.
it sounds like omen.
About that
it
kind
doesn't
of
necessarily mean bad, And so again, it continued on. These synchronicities continued on, and I started to teach myself how to meditate. And through the meditation, when I would lay down, I really felt like I was going into a trance.
Right.
And I would start to see and hear things that just I couldn't deny, which was weird. I'll tell you, it was weird for me because, again, I am now sober and these things are happening to me. And I feel like I can't tell anyone because, God forbid, they're going to think that I'm back on drugs or I've relapsed again. You know what I mean? I've gone through this, again, I didn't just get sober once or twice. It was, 6-7 times that I would go into some sort of sobriety, a program, a halfway house. I've been through 3 rehabs. I've been to a halfway house twice. I've been through in and out of hospitals because of, problems with my physical being through addiction. So it was like, well, I can't tell anyone this. But eventually, I talked to that woman, or I was talking to that woman. I was sending her messages. And I just started to, like I said, out in public, our sensitivity, it became so overwhelming that I would walk by people. Yeah. And I would start to know everything about them. It was becoming weird. Like, what is happening? Like, and I'm thinking, I just know the person. Like, no, I have to know this. I have to know this woman. She must have came into the bar at one point where I was working and bartending. Maybe she told me her life story. And it was like this weird, and I remember I would go back to that woman and I would say, what is this happening? And she'd say, oh, that's a psychic impression. You walked through her energy, you felt it, you picked it up, and you understood everything about her.
Yes. Okay. So I'm so glad that you're bringing this up because I feel like there's a lot of people that I'm connected to that I went to high school with. And I'm from a small town outside of Boston. And I feel like Norwood, my hometown, is filled with all different types of drugs right now. Like, it's actually, Norwood is in the Guinness Book of World Records for the most amount of bars in the smallest radius. And then also the people that stay in that town, they grow up and they have kids in that town. Like, those are the 2 things that they're in the book for. And what's happening is what I've recognized is even friends that I've had that either played sports and tore their ACL ended up taking pain meds. And then the pain meds, you know, they started to get numb from the pain meds, and then they had to go further through the drugs.
Yeah.
A lot of my friends are very psychic. And I have a friend, which I don't know if I told you this, Anthony. You might have seen me post it up. I have a friend, and he was struggling with addiction for years. And it just started to, he'd be in and out of rehabs, just like you're saying, go into the halfway houses, and he was really motivated to get through it. He's very spiritual too, very psychic for as long as I've known him, but he just died actually. It was, gosh, I feel like it was either last summer. I should remember this. I think it was in the summertime, but he's come through since he died. And I've communicated with him since he's passed. But one of the things that I recognized with him was he was so psychic. He would feel everything. And it was just like he tried to get ahead, and then like something else would happen. So I want people that are listening, because I know there's going to be people listening here that are suffering. When you're aware of this, you're aware of sensing the feelings that could be overwhelming. So can you tell them what you do now? Because I think at the beginning of my mediumship, I didn't know I would suppress it, or I would feel anxiety. Like it felt like anxiety, but really I was feeling other people's stuff mixed with my own anxiety. But can you share some tips about that?
Yeah, I mean, again, you know, psychic self-care or self-care, right? Self-care is very important for any psychic or medium, especially because, again, it's sensory overload. You know, our energetic system is going through kind of probably haywire in some sense, where it turns out that we feel like we're feeling anxiety. You know, so one of the things for me is what I was taught on very early too was psychic self-defense. That's probably why I said psychic before. Psychic self-defense. And so, you know, in the morning time when I get up, I really just, you know, I do psychic self-defense. You know, I encircle myself within the white light of God's love and divine protection. And I envision kind of myself being in a bubble. I just bubble myself, and I envision that it being, you know, in that white light of that protection, you know, and I mean, and it takes you, it's not I'll tell you right now, I am not a ritualistic person. I don't do the whole, like, open up and, you know, I don't do all that for myself. I just don't have the time, I feel like. So, you know, psychic self-protection, it takes 10 to 15 seconds to do it as I get up. And, you know, it's funny to me because a lot of people, this is for me, this is for my belief. It's not about the dead. It's not about the deceased I'm protecting from. I'm protecting myself from the living. I'm protecting myself from the energy that I'm about to, you know, feel out throughout my day here, whether that be even my children. I mean, children, right? I have two little kids. I have a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old, Mila and Phoenix. And I'm not, you know, kids, they're jumpy, they're crazy, they want to have fun, woo. And sometimes I get overloaded with their energy, like, whoa, you know what I mean? I could, ooh. And so even that, sometimes I need to just protect myself from it, because I sense that awareness, sense that that energy, and it just kind of makes my system go haywire. So the number one thing I would say is psychic self-defense, you know, and again, you know, that if I do that in the morning, and I know later on in the day, like I know that years ago, before I left my day job to do mediumship full-time, I worked in a very negative atmosphere, so a very negative atmosphere, and probably a lot of people that work day jobs could probably say that about their atmosphere. So I know that if someone was coming around, or I know that, you know, if I was coming back from lunch, I would just redo it again. I would just re-say it in my mind. I would envision myself in the bubble, and that kind of space there, because I needed it later on in the day to kind of just re-up on it, or whatever you want to call it. Another thing is if I knew that I was having a conversation with someone that potentially was very negative, or had I've had encounters before, and I felt weird vibes leaving, or I didn't want to start to sense anything about this person. One of the things I actually learned was about putting a mirror up in front of me. So again, I just visualized just putting a mirror up in front of my face, and that mirror then blocks their energy and it sends it back to them. So none of their projection either comes on to me too as well, but also as well as their energy. So I feel that negativity, that sometimes we walk away from someone, you're in a great mood, right? And all of a sudden you have a conversation with someone. It could even be on the phone, and they dumped all their kind of negative energy on them, all their problems, as you've been that light for them in that conversation. But you wind up leaving, you hang up the phone, you leave, you walk away, you get in your car and drive away, and you were in a good mood. And 10 minutes later, you're feeling down, you're feeling guilt, you're feeling a little shame. You can see me go down to my seat, and you're all of a sudden you're like, what's going on here? And that, I feel like, was that energetic transfer. So I would put a mirror up.
I really love that. I've never heard of that before.
Yeah.
It's funny because as we're talking about this, I'm thinking of when I first started doing mediumship, I was all about the bubble, like I'm going to protect myself. And I don't believe in protecting ourselves from past loved ones either. But the funny thing is I've changed my thought process about it, but I totally love the mirror thing. And I want to share this with you too. You know how I love Anita Morjani?
Yeah. Yeah.
So she talked about, definitely, I feel like humans could be overwhelming with the energy. You feel all their stuff, and us being empathic, we can take on that energy. So she talked about when we're in our power and we have our boundaries in place and we're being ourselves and we're not holding back, that automatically we're not going to be drained. And it woke me up, and I'm thinking, when do I crouch down and pull in my light because I'm afraid to show myself, or I get shy because I'm naturally like a more introverted person. And I think you are too, Anthony. We probably spoke about this. And people won't think that, like, listening to this, if they've seen us before, they might not know that we're introverted, but that's actually what it is. That's the reality of it. But if we're ourselves the whole time, then we wouldn't feel drained. So I feel like, and I have not suffered from addiction. I definitely have drank and that sort of thing. But have you found that when you're in a place of feeling overwhelmed because you're dealing with the struggle, like when you were in the addiction, did you feel like you weren't as on top of your game as you are now, where like now you do the meditation, you exercise, you're doing all these things? Do you feel different from when you felt then?
Compared to when I was in my addiction?
Yes. Where, like, when you were around people, I mean.
Oh, I mean.
When you were soaking up their stuff.
Yeah, it's a difference of night and day, really, for myself, because, again, I think that, any substance, right? Any substance that I can use, that can take me or numb my sensitivity in some way, it made me become a different person. It made me become more of the life of the party, made me come out of my shell in some sense, right? Yeah. And when I'm, now being sober and really, and again, the sober part of it is my sensitivity is heightened because I'm not using anything to take that away, Right. And you know what, I shouldn't, I have to say this, like, caffeine is a drug, I'm not saying it's a bad drug, but I'm saying that if I get too caffeinated, it also messes with my sensitivity as well. Do you see what I'm saying? So if I went to Starbucks and had a double shot, which I can't handle, but if I did, that's going to take me out of myself a little bit too, and dull that sensitivity of myself there. But again, going back to that, where that at those times of using anything to take me, I'm okay to walk into a room full of people and have a conversation. Today, I'm not, which is like what you said is funny, because I know I do, Facebook Lives about teaching a mediumship and stuff like that, or people that meet me or people that see me, come to a demonstration or a gallery and I'm up there and I'm just, going on and on. And it's funny because afterwards, or if I were to walk into like a school function for one of my kids and all these other parents around me, I become shy and introverted. I really am, people say, oh no, he must talk, no, I'm not really like that. So it's very interesting to me. Another thing I just want to say this too is, besides the psychic self-defense, I would say, as part of self-care is also the sense of like taking time for self.
Yes.
So that's a big thing, whether it be through, I do love to meditate, but not all the time. I don't want to sit here and just try to, meditate.
Yeah, I get fidgety.
Yeah. So sometimes, going outside, especially if it's spring or summer, walking barefoot. It's as crazy as it sounds on the grass makes me feel real good. Doing gardening, cutting my lawn, or taking a salt bath, an Epsom salt bath can really, kind of ground out my energy in some sense, and then helps me take care of me. But and I think probably number one too is exercise.
Right.
Myself. That's probably my number one, because I do feel like it does ground me. It grounds my mind in some way too as well. And it kind of gets me into that flow where we know that meditation doesn't have to be sitting in a Zen position.
Right.
No thoughts, no thought. You know what I mean? You could walk and do a meditation, or you could be on the treadmill and do a meditation. So
that's what I find. My meditations are more like the moving meditations. And, it's something that I'm gonna put out there, that I'm gonna be able to sit still and do it, other than the crystal. Like, I love crystal bowl meditation, but sitting still is really difficult for me. Where even like sitting here doing this interview, I'm moving my feet. It's like I'm always moving. That's just how I am. But I truly believe in that. It's powerful, and taking that time to carve out the time for yourself. Because it's so easy to put everyone else ahead, and really you can't give everything to everyone if you're not recharging yourself.
Yeah.
I know we're kind of towards the end, but I want to ask a question for you too, that I've been thinking of. What made the addiction start? Like, what was the first thing that happened that caused this? Like, did you have pain that you had to take medication for? Was it like, what was it?
That's an interesting question, because it makes me think, right? Where again, I go back to when I first started, my drug use, and I didn't do something very normal. I didn't smoke pot first. I actually took LSD for my first time. And again, I was 15. I was 14 or 15 years old. So there was no specific thing besides just being curious to it. People were doing it around me. A neighbor actually is the one that had it, and so she kind of not egged me on, but she said, "Oh, you should try." And so I did it, and like I said, when the first time I ever tried it, later on, and that's not a very easy thing to try for your first time, because it's like an 8-hour,
Right,
experience.
yeah.
It's not like you get high for on pot for an hour and a half, and you're starting to come down. But I knew that I remember clear as day. I said, I love this, because it took me out of me. And so I didn't know that I was sensitive. I remember being, maybe my girlfriend that I had in high school, "Oh, you're too sensitive," or "You're too that," you know what I mean? So, but I didn't know that. But again, going back to childhood, I see it in my children now. My son Phoenix is very sensitive. And I see it like with my dad in my childhood, where I would remember my dad would, my parents were divorced. My dad would pick me up the weekends, and he would just say, "Go change your shirt." Not yelling, but I took it as yelling, because it was the energy, the annoyance behind his energy of his mouth. So I was been that sensitive my whole life. So when I first tried it, that's what it was. But there was a point in my relapse. So now, because like I said, I'm not a first-time winner. There was years I had sobriety, then I would relapse. Years I had sobriety, then I relapse. Then I'd have a year, then I'd relapse. But there was a point of a 6-year sobriety there, and then when I relapsed, around 2008, I had to go for back surgery. And leading up to the back surgery, I had major issues with my back, clearly. And that's what made me opt for the surgery, because I couldn't live like how I was living anymore. I was literally going to a pain management clinic after, cortisone shots and epidurals in my back. And then they just sent me off to pain management. And I was literally getting 180 Roxasets, 15 milligram Roxasets a month, to the point where, and I live in the New York City metro area, and I would have to call, when I would leave that pain management with my prescription, I would have to call the pharmacies around me, because they didn't even carry 180. Like they'd be like, "Well, we have 180.
Yeah.
What the?" They would be like, "What?" So it was the most they would always have was 120. That's not like Percocets. That's the next step up from Percocets, because Percocets I think stop at 10. Roxasets start at 15 milligrams. And so that was my monthly supply.
Wow.
And I would go through that. I would easily have gone through that. And that's where I was like, I just can't live like this anymore. It's legal heroin. It's legal heroin. The opioid you know, especially what you see now, what's happening now in this, in our society today with the addictions of it. But sitting in that room, I remember sitting in that pain management clinic, and I felt like literally I was sitting in probably what would feel like a crack den there, because no one looked normal. No one, it was horrible. And so that messed with me, because part of it, again, I was in pain and with my back, but it was legal, you know, I was getting a prescription for it, but I knew that I couldn't, I mean, it was, I just feel the emotion now of it. I don't ever want to go back into a place like that. And I pray for anyone that's in that spot now, because I was when I would run out, I would then have to go to the street and find Percocets. And I mean, I remember even at the time I wound up breaking my girlfriend at the time's pink piggy bank, like a little pink piggy, to take money out of it to go, because I ran out of pills there. And it was a couple of days before I would go and get my prescription. Not a way to live. I thank God that I've come back. There's so many unfortunate mothers with children that I read for that have lost their child to opioids or drug overdose. And I'm just grateful to be alive.
Yeah, I know. I'm grateful too.
A true addict or an alcoholic, they talk about in the big book of AA, it talks about the phenomena of craving there. And so it's an allergy. It's just like anything else. Like a kid takes a peanut, they blow up now. You know what I mean? They have the peanut allergy. Or somebody gets stung by a bee, they you know what I mean? The ones that are allergic to bee stings, they blow up. They need some sort of medicine, right? To help them. And so that's what I tried. I tried not because just going back and trying it, I tried to heal myself. I tried to, through, subconscious patterning, affirmations, through hypnosis, self-hypnosis, inner child work, even inner child work with a therapist going back and forth. Really dealing with tapping, EFT tapping. I mean, I tried pretty much every modality I could. And what I would do was, it may sound crazy to some, because I was so I felt that I truly would have been able to heal that in some fundamental level. And the only reason I was really trying to heal it was, again, to have just one, and it just didn't work for me. So again, through the process of everything that I tried, I would, go for a couple weeks, and I would do all this, internal work, and try to find out where these patterns were lodged through, going back to childhood, through hypnosis, then through affirmations and self-hypnosis of healing myself, that I'm not an addict, and all this other stuff. And then I would go out and try again. I wouldn't try, it wasn't any hardcore drugs. I would just try to smoke pot. I would try to see if, what would happen. And I always found that next day I would be looking for it again there. And it was that, and I would do it again, and I would okay, this didn't work. And so I kind of went on with that for, God, it's got to be, almost like a year and a half, in that process of, again, it wasn't every week I tried it. I would take a break, then I would go back to this really hardcore, healing, trying to work on myself, through the things that I just said, even meditation there in that sense. But it just didn't, for me, it didn't work. And eventually I had to kind of put it aside, because I felt that it was starting to get worse and worse. I started to want that. It was the phenomenon of craving started to happen, it almost was like, well, wait, am I doing this now because I know that I can use again, And for me, and in our line of work, right, as a sensitive person, I find that it just numbs myself. Don't get me wrong. It definitely, I felt that there was definitely times where it grounded me in some sense, or it let me let go, and there was some sort of release of the struggles that I felt as a sensitive person in that sense, where I could just kind of let go and not have to deal with the outside world. I kind of would go inward about it, and it would make me relax for that night. But again, for me, it was someone that has that. Again, and we don't know what it is, right? Because I don't know if science has ever found it. Is it a gene? Is it predisposed? You know what I mean? Is it genetic? I mean, I think there's so many things there where, again, it's so interesting to me, because when you look at the process of astrology, and some people, and again, just like the line of work that we do, some people believe in astrology, some people don't. But it was interesting to me, just not too long ago, someone sent something about my chart where they were looking at it, and Chiron, which is called the wounded healer, and they say that Chiron in our chart kind of brings through lessons that we learn in this life, things that we signed up. And so Chiron's in my 12th house. And what was so interesting, what that addiction is, one of your lifelong struggles there.
That's
Yeah, I know. I was like, whoa, this is crazy. And then it also says that dealing with a parent that has an addiction. And so I know that it runs in my family line, if you want to say that. My grandfather died of cirrhosis of the liver, so he was an alcoholic, my father's side there. And then my dad stayed away from it for many, many years. I think that I always think that there's some sort of addiction, and maybe we're just taking it out on something else. Like he stayed away from alcohol and drugs because he watched his father. And then here, and then in my generation here, I, was introduced to it, and I loved it from the first time I tried it. Again, because it took me out of me, and it took me away from dealing with I didn't know that I was sensitive at that young. I didn't know that I felt these deeper feelings potentially more than others there. And I didn't know why I struggled with my emotions and feelings in that way. And it was always interesting when at a young age, my mom being actually a counselor in a rehabilitation center, would always want to say, well, let's talk about it. How does that make you feel? And as a 13, 14, 15-year-old young boy, I was like, nah, what are you talking about feeling? You know what I mean? I didn't know. We don't know at that age, I feel like, or it's not talked about. And potentially maybe that is something that should be brought up in education in some way. And we don't talk about it. We teach history and we teach science and whatever else, English, but we don't talk about our emotions or feelings in some sense. So maybe mental health there. But so again, from that young age, when I first started to try or dabble in illegal substances, that's when I found that I loved it, because it took me out of me.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. So you healing yourself, you felt like didn't work. So what did work? Was it
abstinence? Abstinence. For me, again, that's for me. I don't necessarily know. So here's the thing, right? When we talk about, and the reason why I bring this up in this way is because, again, it's that, I hate to call it new age, but mentality, but let's say the new things that are being found, or the newer things also that science and quantum physics is saying in some sense. But there's even a battle there, right? There's people, scientists that say that that's not true, and this is true, and that's true, and not true. What I'm saying is, when we talk about our creating our reality, right? That's what I'm saying. In 2011, 2012, I went full force with thinking that this was the truth. This is the way, you know what I mean? And that we do come to create our reality. And yet I couldn't create my reality that I can use when I want to, and it'd be okay, because the phenomena of craving inside myself begins, right? I can't just use successfully once. And so for me, it was, again, going back to abstinence, you know what I mean? Or of just staying sober, you know what I mean? And so that's, trust me, there's times that I want, there's times that I want to be able to go out and do that, or have that release, or just not worry. But it just hasn't happened. I've heard a lot of good things about sacred plant medicine. And so I think at one point I will try that. Like, I've heard a lot of, I've read a lot of, like, I'm a researcher, right? I've had a lot of research about people with addictions, and through ayahuasca or other plant medicines, that they're able to heal themselves. But again, I don't know if we're able to heal ourselves on that the chorus level that I'll be able to drink or use drugs again how I would want to. That's, to me, was creating my reality. Creating my reality was that I want to use successfully there.
Oh, I understand. Okay, yes.
Like, go out like a normal person. Some normal people, they'll go 2-3 months sometimes, and then they'll go out and have a drink. You know what I mean? Or maybe in a state that it's legal, they'll have a pot brownie, or they'll go to, whatever the case may be. You know what I mean? But that's where I'm saying I was trying to create that.
I understand.
So there's like again, where does that come in? Like, there's underlying rules or laws of the universe, right? And one of them happens to be, for me, that I have this sort of addiction, and I can't use successfully, or I haven't been able to do it. And therefore, for me, what worked was finding complete abstinence, And it's funny, when I went back, right, all of a sudden there was a time I felt really drawn back to the big book of AA. And I was like, what's going on here? And there's so much crazy stuff when you look at the history, again, of Dr. Bob and Bill Wilson and Dr. Bob, who are the two founders of AA. Bill Wilson, they find out in the 1930s, he was sitting in seances. He was a spiritualist. There was a whole thing, like, you know, and he has this, that's how the AA steps come. You know, he has this, he says, well, it's a light in his room, and he's given the information. So is he channeling the information, right? But there's this whole behind it, people, you know, there's just all these stories behind that. It's not talked about in the mainstream of 12-step programs, that Bill sat in seances, literally, back then. And so I was drawn back to it. I was like, oh, maybe I'm drawn back to it to read it now from that way. And there was a line there, and it said, you know, the true alcoholic or addict, no matter what, I'm not saying it correctly, but the concept of it is that no matter what, your whole life will be spent on thinking that you can cure yourself. And when I read that, I went, oh my God, that's me. Like, I've been trying to do that for this long. You know what I mean? And so I had to just end it in that sense.
Wow. So I do want to say everyone could go to, it's anthonymrocka.com, right? To get more information for development classes, for readings, and anything that they need from your website. So that's perfect. And so this is a question that I'm asking all of my guests that come on. And the question is, what was your biggest epiphany moment in your life? The biggest one that you could think of. And then what would the lesson come from that you could help the world, that you can share with the world?
The biggest epiphany.
Yeah, that shift in your life that you're like, okay, that's something that I can think of one for you, but I don't want to tell you it because I'm thinking of a story you told me. But something that sticks out in your mind.
No, I want to hear yours now, though. What's your epiphany?
Well, I was thinking of the Blessed Mother story, but I don't know if you've shared that.
Which one? When I heard?
I think you were in the bathroom or something.
Okay, okay, so I see what you're saying. I'm thinking of epiphany in the sense of like some sort of mental awareness that goes off in my mind.
No, it is.
You know what I mean?
It is. But you share yours.
Yours. But I could say this. Let me say this. I don't share it that often because I feel like, again, having the skeptical mind, people will probably roll their eyes. Oh, sure, you know. But
they can feel it.
But that was a pivotal moment for me because it made me realize there's something else happening that, and my skeptical mind is wrong there. Right. And so it was a time that I taught myself how to meditate. Like I said, I used to lay down and sit there and breathe, and I would fall. It felt like a trance, really. It was an altered state of consciousness. It's not like the typical meditation I think that I do today there. And so I remember that I did this, and as I did this, about, you know, within like 7 to 8 minutes, I would fall into a different kind of state of consciousness. And I remember it clearly. I was living by myself, so I have to be clear on that. I was living by myself. No one lived with me. I didn't have a roommate. No one had the keys to my place. My girlfriend didn't have my keys to the place or anything like that. And as I sat there and meditated, I heard a direct voice. We call it direct voice, right? I heard, you know, in mediumship, a lot of times we hear things, or clairaudience is within our mind, right? But this was a woman's voice outside of myself, like if me and you were talking right now. And clearly I heard the words, "Don't be so anxious, experience." And I said, "What?" And I kept breathing. I said, "Who's here?" In my mind. I said, "This is my mind," because I'm in this meditation. In my mind, I said, "Who's here?" And she said back to me, "St. Mary." And at that point, I went, you know, I had this in meditation. You know, I'm still laying there meditating, like, oh my God. And I started to go into this really place of gratitude because, you know, leading up to this, I was told that Mother Mary is the one that saved me, and through my addiction, right? And so someone weirdly came out and said this to me. It was like, wait, what? And then why it was so weird to me, because 12 years prior, so 12 years earlier, another time that I was, you know, facing a serious battle in my addiction, then another woman told me that St. Mary saved me. And so now these two experiences happen, and now all of a sudden this is happening, like another time that I'm sober, and now I'm hearing this outside to the point where that last time I had to jump someone's effing with me. Like there's someone in my place and messing with me. And I opened my eyes, and like I said, there was no one there. I even got up, I checked my whole house, like, no, there's gotta be someone messing with me. And no one was there. And so at the time I was still smoking cigarettes. I smoked for a light. I was like, what is going on? And I said, well, if that's true, I mean, with that, let's do it again. And so I laid back down after my cigarette, and I tried again, and I created the intention there to connect. And this time I saw things clairvoyantly that still to this day, I've never seen clairvoyance that clear with my eyes closed. It was like I literally was watching, and she showed me these specific symbolisms that I had for her, that someone said that, when you see like a pink rose, that will be, actually someone told me to bring a pink rose to Mother Mary. Yeah. And so I was like, again, all those weird things happen. I'm like, I better do it. So I did. I found a statue of Mother Mary at a church, and I went in the middle of the night and I brought this pink rose to her. I actually still have the picture of it there. And so she started showing me these are the symbolisms that I was seeing with my eyes closed, like I'm watching TV. It was really weird. Yeah. And I jumped up again, and I've never experienced direct voice like that again. And I've never seen clairvoyance like that again, ever, in 9 years now there. And I think that's probably why I became a meditator, because I chased that. I chased that experience of wanting it again. But looking back, that was probably the most, the epiphany experience that made me believe something is happening here. Something outside myself. Yeah. I heard this. I'm not crazy. What is going on here? And, ever since this day, I get filled with gratitude. I feel the emotion inside me. I'm very thankful. I'm not religious. Here, that's the funny part, by the way. I am not religious. I was not raised religious.
Okay.
I didn't go to CCD. My older sisters went, but my mom was a single mom at the time. She went back to night school to get her master's to better herself for her kids. And so I missed CCD. So I was never raised religious. So now St. Mary's taught, like, what is going on here, Mm-hmm. And I believe in Jesus and I believe in Mary, and I just don't see them in the dogmatic way of the religion. I always say Jesus is my homeboy. I think Jesus was the ultimate healer that walked the earth. And I read and I read about him, and I study about him, and I love Yogananda. Paramahansa Yogananda had a whole book on the Yoga of Christ, and so all these things, you know what I mean? I love those types of Saint Mary and Jesus and the deities, but and I feel supported by them, and that's where I feel like I feel the emotion. I feel like my life was saved for a reason, and therefore, if it's to help one person, whether that be through sobriety, addiction, hearing my story, whether that be through connecting a loved one through mediumship, through connecting a mother to a child that's been lost through addiction, or the woman that's lost her grandmother that just wants to come through and provide evidence and validation there's a reason I believe that we're all here, and we all have some sort of purpose, some sort of divine ability that the soul is working, and the universe is always kind of guiding you in that direction if we surrender and let go to it.
I love that. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing your story and being really vulnerable, because I feel like this is going to help more than one person. So thank you, Anthony, for being here today.
Yeah, thank you for having me so much. It's always, and just keep, again, what you and Tony are doing, I know that's just helping tons of people too as well. So thank you so much for you guys being you and you being yourself.
Thank you. We hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we did. If you liked it, leave a 5-star review on iTunes, and remember, subscribe to our YouTube channel too.
If you can think of anyone else that would love this episode, share it with them right now on social media or email. And remember, getting results is a process of learning, applying, and reflecting. Stay consistent and continue to grow every day.